We can expand the scope and range of trust so that we can expand the scope and range of human collaboration. That is the basis of it. But there's a problem. And the problem is that as hierarchies scale, they start breaking down. If you build a structure of organization that looks like a pyramid, power accumulates at the top. The bigger you make that pyramid, the further away the top is from the bottom, the more power accumulates to the top. And other things accumulate to the top. Sociopaths. Because sociopaths are extremely effective at navigating hierarchy. They lack empathy, they're driven, narcissistic, focused, effective, productive. Your boss, right? Does this all sound familiar? And so the presidents, the CEOs, the leaders of religious organizations, studies have actually shown that the rate of sociopathy in these particular groups is 4 times higher than the average in society. Hierarchy doesn't scale, because as power moves up the pyramid, power corrupts. And the more power that accumulates, the more absolutely it corrupts the people at the top. And then the hierarchy, it stops serving the purpose of organizing and creating trust for human collaboration, and it starts serving purely the people who are at the top of the pyramid. So hierarchy is failing us, and the reason it's failing us is not because hierarchy got big. It's because human scale organization got big. We became a global planet. We discovered there are more of us everywhere. And now we try to collaborate on a massive scale. And the best model we have for this is a pyramid, a hierarchical organization. So we put together all our little pyramids, and then we take the people at the top of those, and we send them to Parliament, and then they vote for us to make a bigger pyramid, and then some of them go to the United Nations to make a bigger pyramid, and then they argue about climate change, and we can't get anything done. Because trust isn't scaling. So that brings us to the second topic, the trust revolution. We are experiencing right now a revolution in the application, the architecture, and most importantly, the scale of trust, and what it allows us to do in terms of human collaboration. This revolution is not a revolution in the form of a social revolution overthrowing a government. This is not one where there will be a battle cry or even a battle. This is more like the Industrial Revolution than the Independence Revolution. You see, in the Industrial Revolution, no one picked up a flag that said industrial on it and went, "Viva la Industrial Revolution." In fact, no one even called it a revolution until 100 years later. During the Industrial Revolution, people just called it progress. The trust revolution is that kind of revolution. It's the kind of revolution that is changing the architecture of society, and we don't notice it until 100 years later. We don't notice how much it changed human affairs, how it modified cultural institutions. And this trust revolution didn't start with Bitcoin. It didn't start with the blockchain. It actually started with communications. And it really took off with the internet. What the internet did was it gave us a new platform that allowed us to scale communication and collaboration to a level never seen before. But that platform was missing something. It was missing trust. It was missing the ability to extend trust. And so what did we build in order to create trust within the internet? Hierarchies. In-group, out-group. I friend you, you friend me, I like you, I don't like you, Snapchat this, Instagram that. We're rebuilding tribes. We're trying to apply trust at scale on this new communication medium, and our best recipe for trust is tribalism. And of course, my tribe is better than your tribe. How many people in here have an iPhone? How many people have an Android? Boo. Or maybe the other way around. We try to extend trust on these new communications systems, and we don't have a way to do that. So we try to build hierarchies, we try to apply tribalism, and these fail because they don't scale. And if we do build hierarchies on a new global scale, we are in very big trouble. Because when we build that pyramid, it's going to be so huge, and the power it accumulates at the top is going to be so large that it will take us decades, maybe centuries, to overthrow it from oppressing us. That will be a nasty revolution. But what the internet gave us was a new way of organizing and collaborating as human beings, a flat system, a system of peers, a network-centric way of living where there is no hierarchy, where the system allows you to interact with other people anywhere on the planet on a peer-to-peer basis. And what we were missing was the ability to apply that to trust. We can't trust people we don't know. What Bitcoin did as an invention is it gave us a network-centric system of trust, a flat system of trust that allows us to achieve trust on a peer-to-peer basis. And Bitcoin isn't about trusting people you don't know. Bitcoin is about trusting no one, because you don't have to. Because what you have to trust is simply that the network itself can be trusted. The network itself, as a diffuse, decentralized form of power, a flat system of trust, a platform, can be trusted. It can be trusted so that when I submit a transaction, if that transaction is valid according to the consensus rules, and I can verify that myself, then it's also valid for you, and you, and you, and now I don't have to trust. We can both put our trust in the network rather than each other. And for the first time, trust scales. Now, trust scales on a global level. That's what's happening here. For many years, people involved in this space have been saying, currency is just the first app. I've said it myself. Now we're beginning to see what that means. Currency is just the first app because currency is a very fundamental application of trust. But Bitcoin and its blockchain, and all the other open, decentralized, borderless, flat blockchains that exist out there, they're not currencies. Or at least they're not just currencies. They're platforms of trust. There are other applications that we can build on these platforms that are not currencies. First time I came to Buenos Aires, I met a young kid who built a system of notarization and attestation called proof of existence, using the Bitcoin blockchain as a trust platform. You could mark documents and timestamp them and get immutability. So that had nothing to do with currency, but it was an application on this trust platform. And this year, we're beginning to see the very rapid emergence of some very significant developments in this space. The technology of the applications of trust is exploding. The innovation is accelerating. How many of you here have heard of payment channels or Lightning Network? A lot of people in the audience. Lightning Network is an application of trust on the trust platform. It is a layer above Bitcoin that uses Bitcoin transactions between parties. And it doesn't expect those parties to trust each other. It expects those parties to trust the Bitcoin network. And if you trust the Bitcoin network, you can build these very complex applications, these smart contracts above Bitcoin that utilize the trust platform. We're seeing the same with things like Tumblebit, other forms of bidirectional payment channels, vaults, and various other applications of trust. All of these are not primarily about currency. They're about using this platform of trust to build new and exciting applications. And I have no idea where this is going. And the reason I have no idea where this is going is because we've never done this before. We've never had a global scale platform of trust. We've never had anything like this before. And I told you this is not the kind of revolution where you raise a flag and storm the Bastille. But that doesn't mean it's not revolutionary. That doesn't mean it's not powerful. The Industrial Revolution was more powerful than any of the other revolutions that were happening because it happened everywhere across humanity. Not in one nation or in one town, everywhere. It changed our very culture until we didn't even recognize the fact that it had changed our culture. It's not about having a watch on your hand, it's about even having a concept of a minute. People before the Industrial Revolution didn't know what a minute was. Why? Because their life didn't work on a schedule. We completely changed our society, and we're about to do it again. And this revolution is not just powerful in the ways it changes society, it's also extremely powerful in the ways that it changes the politics of power. Because power is politics, and politics is power, and it's based on an architecture of a hierarchy. And we're introducing a new way of doing social collaboration, of doing social organization. And that way doesn't attack hierarchy, it ignores it. It doesn't seek to substitute hierarchy with force, but with irrelevance, with obsolescence. Hierarchy simply is the less efficient, less effective, old way of doing things. There is now a better way. There is a newer way. Progress. And that's how you start a revolution. Thank you. Now, I don't know if we wanted to do Q&A. I have a whole Q&A section later. I don't know if we have time for some questions here. Rodolfo? Hello? He's having a well-deserved break right now. So I'll just take some quick questions from the audience. And if you want to ask me more questions, I have a session later on today. Who's got a question for me? Anybody? We're all good?
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Do you want to do some more questions, or?
Yes, we can take just one. Someone from the audience?
Yes. Yes, so sometimes in Bitcoin people see concentration in the development teams, or concentration in the mining, or concentration in the accumulation of capital in Bitcoin. Doesn't that violate the tenets of what I'm talking about? Bitcoin isn't the perfect decentralized, flat, open network. And we'll see how it evolves over time. The key here is to realize that the concentrations you see In Bitcoin, they don't give power the way they do in hierarchical organizations. So you have a concentrated group of developers, and they don't get to make decisions. If they did get to make decisions, we wouldn't be having a 1.5-year debate about things, right? Someone would have made a decision by now. But they don't get to impose their decisions. You have a concentration of miners, and they don't get to impose their decision. And you have capital holders, and they don't get to impose the decisions, not in a final way. They have power, and there is more concentration than we'd like. But I think over time, interestingly enough, a flat architecture, instead of concentrating that power more, actually ends up diffusing it. So I would argue that the developers today have less power than the developers had a year ago, much less power than they had 3 years ago when there was 5 of them, right? The miners today have much less power than they had 3 years ago. And the holders of Bitcoin have much less power than they had 3 years ago. So over time, what the architecture of a flat network is doing is it's diffusing power out rather than concentrating it up into a hierarchy. And that's the fundamental thing. This is really an issue of architecture. The current implementation is flawed. It has humans in it, which tends to mess things up. But the architecture leads us to a place of decentralization. Does that help? Thank you. Rodolfo, all yours? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.